She doesn't look like much compared to what you're used to, but I think you'll find she's got character.
Another primitive human vessel.
Then why are you still standing there looking at her?
My name is Syra Vel'Thrane, and I have rejected 847 starships. That number had taken me 14 years to accumulate, and I was not finished yet. I stood in the observation deck of Station Corvus, watching the newest candidate dock beneath the primary bay doors. The ship looked exactly like all the others before it. Adequate, functional, utterly predictable. Another cookie-cutter exploration vessel built to the same specifications that every civilized species in the Accord had been using for the past 3 centuries. A ship designed by committee, built by algorithm, approved by standards boards. In other words, useless to me. My assignment as Requisitions Officer for the Venn Collective was meant to be straightforward. Locate and acquire the finest vessel in known space for our new deep space expedition. The collective did not do things halfway. Our standards were absolute. Our ships reflected our superiority. Sleek, efficient, beautiful in the way that only perfect engineering could be beautiful. I had been given full authority and unlimited resources. What I had not been given was a single ship that came close to acceptable. I had reviewed the Corellian dreadnoughts. Too aggressive, too much wasted hull mass on weapons systems. The Thasian observation cruisers. Elegant, yes, but their atmospheric processors were pedestrian. The Centrath luxury class. An insult, really, all form and no function, built for tourists who thought they wanted adventure. None of them understood what made a ship transcendent. A message flickered across my neural interface. New arrival in Bay 7. Human registry. I deleted it without reading further. Humans. The Accord's latest admittance to the civilized galaxy. I had encountered them exactly twice in my life, and both times I had found them chaotic, inefficient, and baffling in their refusal to recognize the proper order of things. They had only achieved space travel within the last 50 years. They still thought they invented technology themselves, rather than understanding that they were simply rediscovering patterns that nature had already established. They would have nothing worth my time. But the docking notification persisted. Station protocol required a requisitions officer to at least acknowledge all new submissions. I could do that in minutes, file the standard rejection, and return to my actual work. The walk to Bay 7 took 7 minutes. I used the time to review the ship's specifications before I even laid eyes on it. That was my first assessment. Barely 300 meters in length. By Venn standards, it was a scout ship, a training vessel. It had no right being presented as a serious candidate. The hull configuration was wrong. Asymmetrical in places where symmetry should have been absolute. The engine design was bizarre, wasteful, with redundancies stacked on top of redundancies as if the builders did not trust their own work. I walked closer. The closer I got, the less sense it made. Nothing about this vessel followed any design principle I recognized. The hull plating overlapped in patterns that served no aerodynamic purpose. The ventilation ports seemed almost random in their placement. The bridge viewport was angled in a way that would have driven any Venn navigator to distraction. Yet, there was something about the way the ship occupied space. Something about the curves of its hull. Inefficient, yes, but flowing in a way that suggested intention rather than accident. The engine cores were positioned in a way that would actually improve acceleration vectors in ways the standardized configurations never could. Those redundant systems I had dismissed. They weren't redundancy. They were resilience. Built by engineers who understood that their crew would make mistakes, would face unexpected situations, and needed their vessel to survive what the builders could not predict. I stepped inside. The crew quarters were small, cramped by any rational standard. They should have been larger, but they were placed in a way that made the limited space feel purposeful, Every meter accounted for, nothing wasted, nothing excessive. The common areas were designed for actual living, not just existing. There were places where crew could gather, spaces designed for moments that had nothing to do with ship efficiency. In the weapons bay I stopped. The humans had installed targeting systems that made no tactical sense according to Accord standards. The firing solutions were wrong. The power distribution inefficient. But as I pulled up the technical specifications on my interface, I saw what they had done. They had built redundancy into the redundancy. If primary systems failed, secondary systems could compensate. If two systems failed simultaneously, a tertiary option existed. Every weapon system could operate independently or in concert with any other. They had built a ship that could lose half its systems and still fight. I moved through the rest of the vessel in silence. Engineering sections showed the same impossible philosophy. Nothing was elegant. Nothing was optimal by Venn standards. Everything was practical in a way that suggested the designers had actually used spacecraft in hostile conditions, rather than merely theorizing about them. The bridge was the last space I examined, and it was where I finally understood. The captain's chair was positioned in a way that had no design logic. It was offset, angled, in a location that would make no sense on any Accord vessel. And then I sat in it, and realized that this position allowed one person to see all critical displays without moving. Not through elegant engineering, through practical compromise. Through understanding what a human body actually needed. A voice came through the bay communication system. Well, human. Casual in a way that suggested he had no idea who he was talking to. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," he said. "I'm Captain Marcus Chen. I know our ship doesn't look like much compared to what you're used to, but I think you'll find she's got character. And more important than that, she works. Every system in here has been tested in actual conditions, not just theory. We've taken damage and kept flying. We've had crew in medical emergencies and had the space to keep them alive. And we've made it home. 17 times now. That's what this ship is built for. Not to look pretty. To bring her crew home." I did not respond immediately. I had spent 14 years looking for perfection, and I had been searching for the wrong thing entirely. Perfection was a mathematical concept. It could be calculated, optimized, refined into irrelevance. This ship was not perfect. This ship was better. This ship was tested. This ship knew what it meant to fail and had been built to survive that failure. I pulled up my interface and overrode the standard rejection protocols. "Captain Chen," I said. "I am Syra Vel'Thrane, Requisitions Officer for the Venn Collective. I am purchasing your vessel." There was a pause. Then, "We're not selling. I am offering 2 million Accord credits and diplomatic status that will triple your species' trade access within the next standard year," I said. "You are selling." Another pause. Longer this time. "She's not just a ship to us," the captain said quietly. "No," I agreed. "I know. That is precisely why I want her. The Venn Collective needs to learn what it means for something to matter beyond optimization." I transferred the credits. The Defiant would be the first human vessel in Venn service. And as I stood on her bridge, looking at systems that made no sense to anyone who had not tried to survive in the dark between stars, I realized that my search for the perfect ship had ended in the most imperfect place possible. By finding the first one that was actually built for the people who would die inside her.